Welcome to the Mindful Healers podcast with
Dr. Jessie Mahoney
and Dr. Ni-Cheng Liang.
We are here to help you learn to pause and be present, awaken your breath, and harness the ripple effects of mindfulness for radiant health.
We get you. We know you. We are you.
We have both been successful on the surface, yet struggling underneath. We have both had cluttered brains, been overwhelmed, and exhausted.
We're healers who have found solutions and want to share them with you.
Join us here to discover a better way.
Welcome. A reminder that our podcast should not be construed as medical advice. Our intention for today's episode is to open up a discussion about joy and to help you explore joy.
We intend for you to discover that joy is not as easy to find, discover, or experience it as it might seem. So if you have found it somewhat elusive, you are not alone. We also hope to remind you that you know joy when you see it and feel it, and you don't miss it.
Our takeaways for you are that joy is found within you. And in order to notice it and experience it requires mindfulness and presence. Joy is a gift to yourself and to others.
To start our conversation today, we thought a reflection on the idea of joy versus enjoying versus delight or happiness was in order. All of these are positive words and positive feelings, and yet we would like you to just pause and take a moment and think about how they feel very different. When you enjoy something, when you experience delight, when you feel happy, and when you experience joy. Acknowledging also that there's no contest between these emotions. No one is better or worse. They're just different flavors of the full spectrum of life. And as we talk about joy today, reflecting on our own experiences of joy and what joy in our minds at least is. And in my mind, joy is very much a full body experience. Moments where I have found joy in life are really full spectrum. They often move you to tears. You feel a little bit out of your body, at the same time, it very much in your body. But there's great pleasure and happiness. And for me, these moments often come in connection with others or with nature. And so, for example, holding a newborn for the first time, or being at a wedding and experiencing the love and connection and beauty of that. Being in awe and in nature, for me, brings joy. And for me and for many, puppies, dogs, pets demonstrate much joy. And what I reflect on from that is that they are so in the moment. And when you experience joy watching them, you also very much have to be truly in that moment. When have you experienced moments of joy, and what does that feel like for you?
I wanted to share a story, and the story is really timely because I felt this type of joy just today before our podcast recording session. So a recent New York Times article entitled "There's a Specific Kind of Joy We've Been Missing" is published earlier this month by Adam Grant. Reminds us of something called collective effervescence. And this term collective effervescence was introduced in the early 20th century by a sociologist by the name of Emil Durkheim to describe, and I quote directly from the article, the sense of energy and harmony people feel when they come together in a group around a shared purpose. And so timely that we are recording the podcast today. And because this article was just written yesterday, and just today, I felt joy from the collective effervescence. So after a year and a half of not being in dragon boats together with my cancer survivor dragon boat team, we together in a full boat of 20 women cancer survivors for the first time since the pandemic, we're back together. The 20 of us paddling in unison, moving this massively long boat in unison towards a common purpose brought me great joy.
What a beautiful vision, first of all. And a few thoughts on that, that much of joy is energetic, as we spoke about in our last podcast, and a vibrational frequency that's really in every cell of your body. And then that joy comes also when we are connected to others and focused on a purpose. And I just thought that those two key things are valuable to think about when perhaps you are wanting to have more joy in your life. How can you connect more fully to others and connect more fully to your purpose? And perhaps that is where the joy in life can be found. So, as we think a bit more about joy, for me, part of the challenge of joy is to notice the joy that's in front of you. When we are on autopilot, there may be moments of joy that we don't even notice that are happening in front of us. And we also have to allow it and be in a space and time frame where we can experience it. So I like to think that joy requires presence and ease. When you are anxious and stressed, you don't find joy. When you're on autopilot, you don't notice joy. And if you look to the times in our life where we have experienced joy, we are open and we allow it and we're able to receive it. And not just able to receive it, but willing and asking to receive it. And for many people, that is a hard place to get to. It's a vulnerable place. And so while joy feels very positive and uplifting, it's also very vulnerable, raw emotion. So I just wanted to call out that moment. When we do experience it, though, it is very simple. You feel it, you know it, it's there. There's no confusion about what the emotion is. In many ways, it's overwhelming. Another comment on joy that I think is really relevant is that often we feel like we can't or shouldn't experience joy in the midst of struggle or trauma for others or challenges in the world. And this comment that Rhonda McGee made in our Mindful Healthcare Collective book club last year has really influenced me. And she said, it's our call to experience joy even as we work towards better. And as physicians and as people who are always trying to fix and help others improve their lives and take better care of themselves and really try to change things in the world for the better, we often don't allow joy and don't stop and pause to experience the joy. And so to honor the idea that we can allow joy, even when there are things that are happening that are perhaps not okay and people that are struggling. And then that when we do allow joy, it's a gift for others, a gift for our children when they see us allow joy. I have a client who said they had just gone on a family trip to Yellowstone. And when asked what was the best part, one of the children said the best part was watching her mom be so joyful watching the grizzly bears and being in the moment, and that she had never seen her mom be so excited about something. And to me, that just, as you see the ripple effects of joy and how oftentimes, particularly as mothers, I think we deny ourselves some of the joy in life, and we are always busy worrying about everyone else's joy and happiness, and that perhaps attending and being present for our own is just an incredibly powerful thing. And the last thought I wanted to share is this idea of the balance of giving versus receiving. And that comes up in this idea as moms and as physicians, we are givers and we are not particularly good at receiving. And it's often hard in whether it's a loving, intimate relationship or as parents or even as children, we're often uncomfortable in the receiver role. We're often uncomfortable receiving gifts or compliments, and that can be your clue that receiving may not be an area that you're comfortable with. And to practice that and work on that, because that is the part of allowing the joy and letting it in that we do have some control over and we can shift.
There's a guided meditation at the beginning of every mindfulness-based stress reduction course. And for me, it's been taught as a well meditation where I've been asked to imagine a dirty rock next to a well that I then drop this dirty rock in, envisioning this rock sinking deeper and deeper down into the depths of the well. And as the rock sinks, the dirt starts coming off of the rock. And the first time that I practiced this guided meditation was shortly after my year-long journey with cancer treatment. So for me, as each layer of dirt was lifting off deeper and deeper, the answers to the question of why are you here, meaning why are you taking this mindfulness-based stress reduction course, revealed that my foundational reason, my foundational desire was to give myself permission to be happy and feel joy again. Luckily, through the many cycles of the class that I've gone through and now teaching it, during that same well meditation and with the help of my oncology therapist, I'm finally able to find happiness and joy again, recognizing and living firsthand that practicing gratitude invites joy into our lives, as exemplified by Brené Brown's work. So joy arises from within ourselves. And thanks to consistent mindfulness practice, one can allow and fully accept moments of joy, and also one can seek it out by simply paying attention. You talked about presence earlier, Jessie. So being present and then asking ourselves, what am I grateful for in this moment? So if joy eludes you, you could ask yourself that same question. What are you grateful for right now in this moment? I also wanted to bring up this issue of something called the upper limit problem, which I think I was having shortly after my cancer treatment, and why there was a barrier for me to give myself permission to feel happiness and joy again. In the book, The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks, the upper limit problem is described as when we attain high levels of success. Like for me, it was the end of cancer treatment and having a successful outcome. We often can create personal dramas in our lives that somewhat taint the experience with unhappiness. And then it actually prevents us from fully enjoying our enhanced success. And this might happen actually pretty subconsciously. It's almost like we're afraid to completely unabashedly enjoy our success or further indulge in the potential joy that a particular situation has brought us. And why is that? So there's this inherent fear for another shoe to drop. A self-protection mechanism might kick in to bring our amplitude of emotions closer to our baseline, because when we reach heights in emotions that are too high, that too can be somewhat uncomfortable for us.
So this upper limit problem gets in the way of joy, because joy is something that we often experience after these high levels of success. What I also found really eye-opening is this idea that the upper limit problem can happen even when you're not sort of high levels of success or around achievement, but just around a situation. You have some beautiful day And then all of a sudden you notice that you're picking fights or nitpicking things, or you have scary dreams, or something happens where you just cannot allow it in, or you cannot appreciate it. And so that sometimes it's around a situational happiness or a situational success. It might also be how you were programmed as a child. And so the way you expect your home life to be, for example, and then things are so much better that they're uncomfortable. And so we're often comfortable in discomfort. And I know we talked a little bit about this in the discomfort podcast, but this upper limit problem can come in there where we become uncomfortable with the success. And so we sort of bring ourselves back to a place where we are comfortable. And so for me, the most obvious one is like, notice when you pick a fight with someone, and we often don't like to think we're picking a fight, but notice when you have a fight, what caused it and where did it come from? Or if you, I see this a lot with physicians who maybe don't get all their charts done, and they realize actually that they could get them done, and yet they continue to make different choices because they're so used to being someone who has this issue that needs to be fixed. And so if they were to fix that, what would happen? And so it is this sort of self-protection mechanism that gets in the way of doing things that we really might want to do. I've also seen it in this way of leaving yourself unkind cues all over, things that make you remember the things that you haven't done, or so that you're sabotaging yourself in a way of having cues in your life that remind you of why you're not as successful as you might appear on the outside. So we wanted to talk a little bit about the concept of joy in medicine or joy in practice. And this is something that has been brought up as an aspiration in the healthcare world recently. And where I used to practice, one of the strategic imperatives was joy and meaning in medicine. And the reason I thought it would be interesting to bring up is that the goal that we want? Is medicine the place for joy? Is it the right feeling to aspire to? Is it possible in medicine? Or is it that we want to have moments of joy? And remembering that in medicine, we're often dealing with difficult situations. And so how does joy fit in there? And I invite this conversation not with the idea that there is a right or a wrong answer. And in fact, I think in different days and different situations, the answer would be different. And for each of us, it may be different. But that the word choice is important. And in my mind, joy is something that you choose and let in and allow, and that we each get to choose whatever that is. And if you are not finding joy in medicine, or maybe the word doesn't resonate with you, perhaps there's nothing wrong. Perhaps you are looking for something different. And in my case, I realized that much of my joy in work and in caring for others comes from being present and being connected. And so I think about the joy as being in that flow state. And when I'm in that flow state, it's fairly close to joy, although I feel like I would almost use a different word. And so I just wanted to offer for people who, there were many people who I worked with who found it triggering that we were being asked to find joy. And so I want to offer that we all get to choose however it is we want to feel in our work. I think aspiring to choose something that feels good and makes you feel alive and engaged and present and passionate is of value, but you may or may not pick that word. What are your thoughts?
I don't necessarily set the intention every day to have a joyful moment each and every day that I practice medicine. I know that it's possible because, as I'll share just in a little bit about the moments of joy that I've experienced in medicine, I do find that with mindfulness practice, I can notice when joy is near, and then giving the opportunity for natural curiosity to arise. Perhaps it's an expression of compassion, perhaps it's connection that you mentioned earlier. And that little extra step is all I need to notice the joy in the moment of practicing medicine. So I'll give you some specific examples, like a patient sharing with me their joy of being able to attend their grandchild's graduation, for instance, after fighting so hard with setback after setback related to their health, but working hard and being intentional about honoring, prioritizing their pillars of health, and in their determination, being able to attend their grandchild's graduation. Their joy in expressing their lived experience of being there, being present for their grandchild, becomes infectious. Or the joy that a patient has expressed to me in emerging triumphant, for instance, in being able to quit smoking. Or one poignant recent experience that I had that was concurrently endearing and brought me joy was when my patient remembered our conversation about her organic garden and how she had an excess of radish leaves. And I shared that my rabbits would love to indulge in her radish leaf excess. At the next clinic visit, she actually brought me a whole bag of radish leaves and radishes that were already cut up, ready to feed my rabbits. So that was an unexpected, endearing moment of joy for me in medicine.
In pediatrics, we actually do have a lot of joyful moments because we're often there for births and or newborn checks, welcoming new adopted children into our practice or into people's lives. And what struck me as you were talking is my moments of joy came because children generally said or did funny things. And one of the reasons I love being a pediatrician and a mom, I love children, and they are so in the moment and so present. And when we can allow ourselves to sink into those moments, so once again, it's the presence and the connection, and experience the joy with them or the surprise with them, that can be a way to access joy. Again, if you are struggling to find it. The other thought was humor is a conduit to joy. So not only presence and connection, but humor. So when something is funny, you actually can tap a little bit more easily into that moment of presence and where you let go and you're vulnerable and you release, and that's where the joy can be found. So as our usual consistent practice, we wanted to offer some mindful reflection questions as we end this episode. Can you notice what makes you happy?
What are your sources of happiness and joy?
What do you love?
What are you grateful for right now?
What moments of true joy have you had in your life? How did it feel in your body? What led to it? What were the magic ingredients?
I wanted to end this episode with a quote from the Book of Joy with His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu with Douglas Abrams. His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, "The ultimate source of a meaningful life is within ourselves. If you live in this way until your last breath comes, you will be a happy, happy person. That's the goal of human life, to live with joy and purpose."
And what if the purpose of life is to find joy and to live with ease? Thanks so much for listening today. As always, we invite you to leave us stars and reviews. And we also invite you to join us for some upcoming offerings.
I invite you to join me with physician colleagues in the Mindful Physician course starting August 8th, where building the scaffold of mindfulness for support might just enable you to notice, allow, and accept more moments of joy in medicine and ultimately in your life.
And I invite you to join me for many moments of joy during a week of retreating in Central California in the end of August. The work you do there will help you live a more present, easeful, and joyful life when you return home.
Thank you so much for listening, and please stay on after the sound of the singing bowl for our mindful moment offering.
As always, if you want to declutter your mind, be more present, and start truly living your one wild and precious life, come find us at the mindfulhealerspodcast.com.
Work with one of us.
Work with both of us.
Start or uplevel your mindfulness practice.
Discover how mindful coaching can change your life.
Or even better, do both as part of our Mindful Healers programs and retreats. You can find links to find out more about our programs and join our communities at themindfulhealerspodcast.com.
Reach out and get started on your journey to a life better lived today.
The content of this podcast is not meant to be medical or life advice. If you choose to participate in our mindful moments, please do so safely. Welcome to the mindful moment, inviting you to practice in a safe location, perhaps closing eyes, sitting in a position of comfort. Allowing yourself to fully arrive for this moment. Inviting you to conjure up a memory where full joy was experienced. Recollecting the memories, the circumstances related to this joyful situation. Inviting you to tap into what's here for you now, recounting this joyful experience. First, perhaps by noticing the body sensations that are arising for you as you recount the experience of joy that you've had. Where do you feel joy in the body? What are those body sensations of joy for you? Knowing that joy permeated this particular experience for you, what emotions also get conjured up as you recount this joyful experience? Naming those emotions, and in recounting the experience, what thoughts do you have about the joyful happening in your life? And as we close this practice of joy, recognize that you can tap into the inherent experience of joy because you've felt joy before and you will feel joy in the future. It's something that can come from within, knowing that you and all humans have the capacity for joy. Blinking open eyes, if your eyes are closed, letting the light back in, taking a moment now to notice how you feel compared to just a few minutes ago. Thanks so much for practicing with us.